Project today, I did Cocos2d-x version 3.0 beta, and I did it with the iOS. And so you enter the game with the intro screen, which is just a Cocos2d layer. I start the music and then the background music, and I create the button to go to main menu. And when you press the button, it stops the music, the background music, and replaces the intro screen with the main menu screen. And then the main menu scene is a Cocos2d layer with two buttons. When you enter the main menu scene, you start the background music for the main menu scene, and you create the two buttons for entering the game and exiting. When you enter the game, you stop the background music and you push the game scene. Inside the game scene, you have a player object and an array of enemies. So, when you enter the game scene, we create a main menu button that takes you back to the main menu. Then we create the play. We set the player's position to the left side of the screen, halfway, half of the height, and we add the player's sprite. And then we create the touch listener, and then we set the on touch begin. And on touch begin, we just check to see if the touch is colliding with the player object, and if so, we just set the the touching bool to true, so that on touch move, we will then, if the touch was hitting the player, colliding with the player, we then move the player. And then while we're moving the player, we just cycle through the enemies to see if the player's position collides with any of the enemies. And if so, we set the game condition. We call it the game condition function and set it to false if it collides with one of the enemies. And if it doesn't collide with any of the enemies, then we check to see if the player has reached the finish line. If so, then we call game condition and just set it to true. If it doesn't touch the finish line or any of the enemies, then we just set the position of the player. And then we get the event dispatcher and add that listener to the event listener with graph priority. And then I created a Box2D. I was going to implement physics of some nature into it, but didn't get to it. And then we created the enemies. For the enemies, we picked a random position away from the finish line and away from the starting area of the player. We set their enemies' positions, and then got the sprite of the enemy and added it to the game scene. And then at the end of the init, we started the background music for the game. And so if you press the main menu button, we just pop the scene. So in game condition, we stop the background music, and if it was true, then we are going to replace the game scene with the win scene, and we play an effect for that. And if you lose, we will replace the scene with the lose scene and play the lose sound. inside player object, we have a position, the bounds, and the sprite. So we just set a position when you create a player object. We set the sprite to the player sprite, and we set the sprite's position to the player's position, and we create the rect for the player. And when you set the position of the player, when you call the player set position, it sets the sprite's position and the rect's position. The enemy has the same position, bounds, and sprite as the player would. And also, when we set position, we set the player's position and the sprite's position and the rect's position. Inside win scene, it's just a Cocos2d layer. We create a button to go to the main menu, and we also load in the win scene, the win PNG. And when you click on the main menu button, you go to the main menu scene. The lose scene is the same thing, but instead of a win PNG, we just load the lose PNG. And so now I'll show you the game. So here we will hit an enemy, and you lose. And do it again, and you can win. And that is my project.